9 signs. You cannot trust someone. Stoicism philosophy. A trusting heart is vulnerable, but a wise heart is discerning. Trust is one of the most powerful forces in human relationships. It can build bridges or, if misplaced, it can cause them to crumble. But how can we, with clarity and confidence, determine when trust is truly deserved? In today's fast-paced world, we often give our trust too easily, or, on the other hand, withhold it out of fear. However, as Stoic philosophy teaches us, trust is something that must be earned, not granted blindly. In this video, we're going to explore 9 signs you cannot trust someone from a Stoic perspective, signs that, if ignored, could disrupt your peace of mind and your relationships. As we navigate through these indicators, we'll reflect on the Stoic principles of discernment, emotional control, and self-awareness that help us navigate the complexities of trust. Stay with me as we uncover these crucial signs, allowing you to build more resilient relationships and avoid the dangers of misplaced trust. Welcome to Stoic in Your Life. Let's dive in. 1. They lie to themselves. Trust, as the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. This principle extends beyond material wealth and into the realm of relationships. Trust is a currency we use to measure the integrity and reliability of those around us. But how can we trust someone who lies to themselves? It's an unsettling thought, yet one that we often encounter in modern life, especially as we age and look back at the relationships we've built. We may find that certain people consistently deceive themselves, creating illusions about who they are and the decisions they make. This self-deception, although sometimes harmless in small doses, can be the root of much larger issues when allowed to grow unchecked. At first glance, a little self-deception might seem innocent enough. We all promise ourselves things we don't follow through on, whether it's deciding to start a new diet tomorrow, or convincing ourselves that one more episode of a TV show won't harm our productivity. These are the common little lies we tell ourselves to make life more comfortable. Self-deception erodes this very concept. The small lies that we tell ourselves might seem insignificant at first, but when accumulated, they become a pattern. Over time, this pattern can foster dishonesty in other areas of life, such as how we present ourselves to others, our relationships, and even our own sense of integrity. A Stoic, someone who strives for virtue and clarity, must be truthful not only with others, but also with themselves. When we let self-deception take root, we are no longer dealing with reality, but with a carefully constructed illusion. And illusions have no place in the life of a Stoic. They cloud judgment, disrupt personal growth, and, most dangerously, they make us blind to the truth. The danger lies in the transformation of occasional self-deception into a habitual way of living. People who live in constant denial or who reshape reality to suit their desires are not just lying to others, they are lying to themselves. This becomes a lifestyle of false narratives, where everything from their shortcomings to their actions is reframed in a way that makes them appear virtuous or blameless. When we do this, we are not only deceiving others, but we are also deceiving ourselves about our true nature. This creates a false sense of security, a belief that all is well when, in reality, we are neglecting the truth. The greatest wealth is to live content with little, said Plato. Living in a lie, however, does not allow us to cultivate contentment because we are always striving to maintain the illusion. People who live like this often struggle with relationships, as they cannot allow themselves to be vulnerable or honest with others. Their need to uphold a carefully crafted persona becomes more important than the truth. When this becomes a lifestyle, trust becomes increasingly difficult to build or maintain. This pattern of self-deception can have profound effects on trust in relationships. If a person cannot be honest with themselves, it raises a valid question. How can they possibly be truthful with others? Self-deception isn't just a personal flaw. It influences how someone interacts with the world. When someone rewrites their own story to maintain a facade, It is only a matter of time before this behavior bleeds into their relationships. This is especially true in relationships where trust is paramount, whether with family, friends, or partners. What is the most important thing in life? To be clear, to be true, to be just, said Seneca. Without this clarity, the web of lies that a person has woven around themselves will inevitably extend to others. Someone who consistently deceives themselves may not even be aware of the subtle ways in which they are betraying the trust of those around them. For example, someone might present themselves as an innocent, misunderstood figure, when in reality, their lack of accountability for their actions has already damaged the trust others had in them. At first, this betrayal might seem insignificant, a small misstep here or there. But over time, these little deceptions accumulate, and trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. As you reflect on the relationships in your life, consider this crucial lesson. A person who cannot be honest with themselves is incapable of being honest with you. This is not just a moral judgment, but a practical observation rooted in the Stoic understanding of human nature. If someone cannot confront their own truths, they will project that same avoidance onto others. They may lie, manipulate, or distort reality in order to keep their own self-deception intact. But as a Stoic, it is your responsibility to see through these illusions. It's essential to understand that trust is a two-way street. It's not enough to give your trust freely. You must also scrutinize whether the person you're trusting has the capacity for honesty, self-reflection, and integrity. In modern life, this can be difficult, especially as we are constantly surrounded by people who present curated versions of themselves. Social media, work pressures, and personal insecurities all contribute to this facade. However, as Stoics, we must strive to see past these facades and recognize the true nature of those around us. Trust is built on honesty, and honesty begins with self-awareness. A person who deceives themselves cannot be trusted to treat you with the same clarity. In relationships, whether personal or professional, trust is the foundation upon which everything else is built. Without it, misunderstandings, resentment, and ultimately betrayal will follow. In your life, it's essential to remain vigilant against self-deception, both in yourself and in those around you. By applying the Stoic principle of self-reflection and integrity, you can avoid the dangers of misplaced trust and cultivate relationships based on genuine truth and mutual respect. The key is to embrace the uncomfortable process of self-examination and confront the hard truths about yourself and others. In doing so, you will cultivate not only trust, but also the strength and wisdom to maintain it, even when faced with life's challenges. By acknowledging the signs of self-deception in others and guarding against it in ourselves, we are empowered to make wiser decisions in our relationships. As Marcus Aurelius wisely said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Through the process of recognizing and confronting self-deception, we clear the path to greater honesty, trust, and authenticity in all our interactions. Let this be the cornerstone upon which you build your relationships, one rooted in the wisdom of self-awareness and the clarity of truth. 2. They are two-faced. Have you ever had someone praise you to your face only to hear them speak ill of you behind your back? Or perhaps you've encountered someone who acts friendly in public, yet shows contempt and coldness when the spotlight is off. This kind of behavior, where a person presents a completely different version of themselves depending on who's around, is what we call being two-faced. It's a term that resonates deeply, especially when we think about how we navigate trust in our relationships. As the ancient philosopher Epictetus wisely stated, "A man is not good because he is good to one man, but because he is good to all men." True integrity doesn't change with circumstances, but in the modern world, we often encounter individuals who wear a mask, shifting their demeanor and values based on who is watching. These two-faced individuals can be found everywhere, from workplaces to social circles. They manipulate their image to fit the moment, pretending to be your ally in one context, only to betray you in another. This is a common, but subtle form of dishonesty, and it can be incredibly damaging. The hidden danger of two-faced behavior is that it thrives on manipulation. These individuals use their charm and friendliness to gain your trust, but they do not value honesty or consistency. They are like chameleons, adjusting their personality based on who they are interacting with. When they are around you, they seem like your best friend or confidant. Yet, the moment they are in a different environment, they turn against you. This hypocrisy is not just an inconvenience, it's a betrayal of trust. Trust is built on consistency and transparency, and when someone is two-faced, they tear down the very foundation of trust. Think of it like this. If you have a friend who constantly praises you in public but speaks ill of you in private, can you truly trust that person? The answer is no. As Marcus Aurelius put it, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. The two-faced individual is an enemy to your peace, your trust, and your relationships, and by embodying Stoic principles of consistency and integrity, we can recognize these individuals for what they are. Now, let's consider how two-faced people manipulate relationships. The key here is emotional confusion. These individuals create chaos by playing different roles depending on who they are with. One moment, they act like your best friend, supporting you, laughing with you, and sharing your victories. But the next moment they turn into a completely different person, undermining you behind closed doors or betraying your trust in subtle ways. A colleague who acts friendly and supportive when you're both in the office, sharing lunch and chatting about your personal lives. But the moment you're not around, they gossip to your boss, distorting your words or taking credit for your work. You might never know the extent of their betrayal until it's too late. But the damage is done. Your reputation is on the line, and trust in the workplace starts to crumble. This kind of behavior not only damages personal relationships, but can also harm your career, friendships, and sense of security. The emotional toll can be heavy as you begin to question everyone's true intentions. A two-faced person thrives on this uncertainty, manipulating emotions and situations to their advantage. The key takeaway here is that two-faced people will eventually betray your trust and damage your reputation. No one can sustain such a dual nature indefinitely, and it will come to light. In the long run, the truth has a way of revealing itself, and the person who has been pretending to be something they are not will be exposed. The emotional confusion they create will eventually catch up with them, as those around them start to notice the inconsistencies in their behavior. But by then, the damage has been done. Relationships that were once solid may begin to deteriorate, and trust that was once freely given becomes a scarce commodity. You might even find yourself second-guessing others, wondering whether they too are hiding their true intentions. This is where Stoicism can be a powerful tool for navigating the complexities of human nature. By cultivating wisdom, self-awareness, and emotional control, you can recognize the signs of manipulation before they cause irreparable harm. Stoics believe in the power of integrity, living a life in accordance with your values, regardless of external circumstances. This unwavering commitment to consistency helps to shield you from the toxic influence of two-faced individuals. Let me share a story to illustrate how two-faced behavior can show up in our lives. A few years ago, I had a close friend who seemed to always be there when I needed him. We would meet for coffee, share stories about life, and laugh together. But over time, I began to notice strange things happening. Our mutual friend started telling me that he had been saying unkind things about me behind my back, twisting our conversations into something they were never meant to be. At first, I didn't believe it. After all, he had always been so friendly to me. But as more stories began to surface, I realized that his actions weren't matching his words. It wasn't just that he was speaking negatively about me. He was also using my personal struggles as ammunition to elevate himself in social settings. His two-faced behavior not only shocked me, but also hurt me deeply, and it took a long time for me to rebuild my trust in others after that. What I learned from this experience is that when people act like this, it's not just about them trying to manipulate you. It's about them creating an environment where they can control the narrative, make themselves look good, and maintain power, and often they don't care who they hurt in the process. If you find that someone is acting one way in your presence and another when you're not around, take a step back and evaluate the situation. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca reminds us, a friend to all is a friend to none. Those who act like they are your friend in one moment and your adversary in the next are not true friends. They are driven by self-interest and manipulation, and they will not hesitate to betray you when it suits them. Protect your peace by cultivating discernment and remaining grounded in your values. People who are two-faced can cause immense damage to your emotional well-being and your reputation. But if you remain steadfast in your commitment to integrity and consistency, you will be able to see through their facade and protect yourself. By being mindful of their behavior, maintaining clarity of thought, and relying on the Stoic virtues of wisdom, courage, and justice, you can avoid falling victim to the manipulation of two-faced individuals. Trust yourself, stay true to your values, and you will be better equipped to navigate the complexities of relationships without being swayed by those who seek to deceive you for their own gain. 3. Persistent jealousy. Have you ever felt the sting of jealousy creeping up on you? Perhaps in a small, seemingly harmless way, only for it to grow into something much bigger? Or maybe you've had someone close to you show signs of jealousy, and you've seen how it can slowly start to eat away at your relationship? Jealousy is the fear of comparison, as Max Frisch, a Swiss writer, once put it. It's that feeling that begins as a flicker of envy, but if left unchecked, it can fester and turn into a toxic, destructive force that corrodes not only your peace of mind, but also the trust and connection you share with others. What begins as a simple desire for what someone else has can evolve into resentment, a deep-seated desire not only to have what they have but to see them lose it. This is the danger of jealousy. It doesn't just wish to emulate, it wants to diminish. It's like watching someone drive a car you wish you could afford, but then you secretly want to see them crash it. Isn't that a sad truth? Jealousy doesn't stop at wanting. It extends into a deep-rooted bitterness, a resentment for another person's success, which eventually leads to undermining that very success. A jealous person doesn't merely admire what you have, they resent you for having it. Think about that for a moment. How does it feel to be around someone who resents your success instead of celebrating it with you? Jealousy turns what could be a supportive relationship into a silent battlefield. It makes everything a competition rather than a mutual journey toward growth. Now, let's explore how jealousy erodes trust. People who are consumed by jealousy will do more than just harbor ill feelings toward you. They may quietly, subtly, try to undermine your success. How? By downplaying your achievements or offering backhanded compliments that are disguised as praise but are actually veiled criticisms. They might say things like, "You're so lucky, I don't know how you pull that off. Must be nice." Or, "You've been doing well lately, haven't you? I hope it lasts for you." These words might sound innocent enough, but when you listen closely, they are laced with the sting of judgment and jealousy. You see, a jealous person doesn't know how to celebrate your success because they're too focused on how your success makes them feel inadequate. They want to see you stumble, if only for a moment, because it would allow them to feel better about their own situation. The Stoic approach to jealousy provides a powerful antidote to this destructive force. Stoicism teaches that we should focus on our own progress and growth, rather than comparing ourselves to others. It encourages us to let go of envy and to redirect our energy toward our own personal development. After all, what is jealousy but a reflection of our dissatisfaction with ourselves? A jealous person is trapped in a cycle of inadequacy, believing that their own worth is tied to what others have or achieve. But Stoicism reminds us that no external success, no matter how grand, can ever fulfill us if we don't already feel complete within ourselves. A Stoic understands that true fulfillment comes from within, from living a life of virtue and focusing on the things that we can control, our thoughts, actions, and attitudes. So, when faced with someone else's success, instead of feeling jealousy, a Stoic might ask themselves, What can I learn from this person? How can I use this to fuel my own growth? This shift in perspective is not easy, but it's incredibly powerful. It allows us to break free from the comparison trap and to stop measuring our worth by someone else's yardstick. When we do that, we free ourselves from the corrosive effects of jealousy, and instead, we start seeing others' successes as a source of inspiration rather than threat. If you find yourself facing jealousy, either from within or from someone else, take a moment to pause and reflect on the deeper lessons. Jealousy turns relationships into competitions. Instead of mutual support, it fosters comparison, and where comparison thrives, trust withers. It's no longer about lifting each other up, but about winning or losing. When trust is eroded by jealousy, relationships lose their depth and their authenticity. Have you ever been in a relationship, whether romantic or platonic, where you felt like your successes were treated with disdain, or worse, fear? It's exhausting, isn't it? Constantly feeling like you have to walk on eggshells, not knowing if your victories will be met with genuine joy or a hidden agenda. Trust cannot flourish in such an environment because it's always under siege. And yet many of us have experienced this. We've been around people who could never truly be happy for us, who always seemed to resent our good fortune. Over time, this breeds doubt. We start questioning the authenticity of their support. Is this person really a friend, or are they just waiting for us to fail? We do when jealousy shows up, either in ourselves or in others. First, let's look inward. Are you comparing yourself to others too much? Are you letting jealousy creep in, thinking that someone else's success takes away from your own potential? If so, it's time to reframe your thinking. Take a step back and remind yourself of what's important. Focus on your own growth, your own path, and your own journey. The world doesn't need another person to live in comparison. It needs someone who is grounded in their own truth, someone who can stand in their own worth without being swayed by what others are doing. And when it comes to others, if you sense jealousy in someone around you, it's crucial to protect your own peace. You don't need to prove anything to them. Instead, practice understanding and compassion, but don't let their envy overshadow your joy. Understand that their jealousy is more about their own struggles with self-worth than it is about you. By recognizing this, you can let their negativity roll off your back without letting it take root in your heart. Jealousy undermines trust because it turns relationships into competitions. Trust can't thrive when we are constantly measuring ourselves against one another, when our successes are seen as threats rather than celebrations. But by following the Stoic path, focusing on our own growth, practicing self-awareness, and cultivating gratitude, we can break free from this cycle. We can learn to appreciate others' successes without feeling threatened by them, and we can build relationships based on mutual respect, support, and authentic trust. In the end, trust is the foundation upon which all meaningful relationships are built, and jealousy, as small as it might seem at first, has the potential to crack that foundation. 4. They are dodgy, evasive, and unreliable. Trust is a fragile thing. It thrives on clarity, consistency, and reliability, but it can quickly dissolve in the presence of evasion and ambiguity. Have you ever dealt with someone who seems to dodge your questions or gives you vague, half-hearted responses when you're seeking something clear and direct? Perhaps you've encountered someone who always seems to change the subject when confronted about their actions or decisions, leaving you feeling unsettled and unsure about their true intentions. That's what we call dodgy behavior, a form of evasion where the person deliberately avoids giving you concrete answers or addressing matters directly. And it's not just about avoiding difficult conversations, it's a deliberate tactic to keep you from seeing the full picture, to make you second-guess and question everything. The more you know, the less you need to say, said the Stoic philosopher Epictetus. But a dodgy person doesn't know when to stop talking or when to provide clarity. Instead, they leave you guessing. Every interaction with them becomes like trying to read between the lines, unsure whether their words are truthful or just meant to keep you at bay. Their answers are always vague. their promise is empty. You ask for details, and you get half-truths, or no response at all. Instead of being transparent, they have a habit of deflecting, often changing the subject to something unrelated when confronted about their actions. This evasive nature isn't just frustrating, it's deeply unsettling. The ambiguity they create builds walls, making it difficult to know where you stand with them. He who is not a good servant will not be a good master, Epictetus also reminds us, and similarly, if someone can't be clear or straightforward with you, how can you trust them to keep their word in more important matters? In the world of relationships, whether personal or professional, trust depends heavily on consistency. But when someone keeps you in the dark, refuses to give you straight answers, or offers excuses instead of explanations, that trust begins to erode. Have you ever dealt with someone who makes promises but never follows through? They might tell you they'll meet a deadline, but when the time comes, they always have an excuse. Something came up, they're too busy, or they claim they forgot. It might seem small at first, but over time, this lack of reliability creates a cloud of doubt. You start to question if they can be counted on at all. It's like when someone says they'll help you out, but when it's time to show up, they are nowhere to be found. Every missed commitment weakens the trust you've placed in them, and it leaves you with a lingering uncertainty. So how do you respond to someone like this? How do you navigate a relationship where promises are made, but never kept? The answer is simple, but difficult. Trust must be earned, not assumed. Trust thrives in an environment of transparency, where words match actions, and where commitments are followed through without needing constant reminders. A dodgy person's actions, or lack thereof, show you exactly where they stand. They might not say it outright, but their behavior speaks louder than any words they could use. Every time they evade a question, or fail to meet a promise, they chip away at the trust you've placed in them, and the relationship becomes harder to maintain. You can probably recall situations where someone has promised you something and then didn't deliver, leaving you feeling disappointed and perhaps even questioning their integrity. One of the worst feelings is when you've made plans with someone who is consistently unreliable. It creates anxiety and stress because you can never be sure whether you can count on them or not. What starts as a simple misunderstanding or a few minor excuses grows into a much bigger issue as trust in the relationship begins to falter. If you cannot count on a person to show up when they say they will, or if they consistently dodge your questions, how can you rely on them in more critical situations? It is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them, said Epictetus. And this couldn't be more true when it comes to dodgy people. Every time you experience evasion, your mind starts to fill in the blanks. You begin to wonder what they are hiding and why they can't just be clear with you. The constant uncertainty makes you question not just their actions, but their integrity as a whole. You start to wonder if everything they've said to you is just another layer of smoke and mirrors, designed to keep you distracted from the truth. This is where the erosion of trust happens. When you're left in the dark about someone's true nature, constantly second-guessing their intentions and actions. Ultimately, trust thrives on clarity and consistency. You need to know where you stand with someone, and their words and actions need to align. When someone is dodgy, however, they keep you guessing. Their lack of clarity leaves you uncertain, and over time, this confusion and doubt become a heavy burden to carry. So how can you avoid being caught up in this? First, learn to observe actions over words. A dodgy person can talk a good game, but their actions will always reveal their true intentions. If someone promises something but constantly makes excuses or avoids responsibility, it's a sign that their commitment to you, or to anything, is not solid. Don't let yourself get caught in the web of half-truths and evasion. If you recognize this behavior, it's time to set boundaries and decide how much of your trust you're willing to give. And second, practice Stoic self-awareness. The Stoics teach us to reflect on our own values and actions and not let external circumstances or people dictate our peace of mind. If someone is dodgy, it's not your job to constantly chase them for clarity. Instead, focus on your own clarity, your own truth, and don't let the evasion of others disrupt your own stability. In today's world, where communication is often fleeting and promises are sometimes broken without a second thought, recognizing dodgy behavior is essential. Trust isn't something that can be blindly given. It's something that must be earned and maintained over time. Whether it's in personal relationships, professional settings, or even casual encounters, we all encounter people who are evasive and unreliable, but we don't have to let their behavior dictate how we feel or how we navigate our own relationships. The key takeaway here is that trust is built on clarity and consistency. A dodgy person, through their actions or lack thereof, makes it difficult to build any solid foundation. If you've stuck with me through this video, you're already taking the first step toward mastering your relationships with wisdom and clarity. Leave a comment saying, "I trust wisely," and let me know how you're applying Stoic principles in your life. Hit that subscribe button so you won't miss more life-changing insights. 5. They can't keep your secrets. Trust is a delicate and fragile thing, built on the foundation of respect, privacy, and mutual understanding. But when someone betrays that trust by revealing your secrets, the damage goes far beyond just a simple breach of confidentiality. It's not just about someone spilling your private information. It's a signal that the relationship was never truly sacred to begin with. That sense of betrayal cuts deeper than most realize. It's as though you've been stripped bare, exposed to the world, vulnerable and unprotected. In today's world, privacy feels increasingly rare, yet it is one of the cornerstones of a strong and trustworthy relationship. When someone exposes your struggles or distorts your personal story for gossip or to elevate their own standing, they not only break your trust, but they also harm the sacred bond that you had worked so hard to build. This is where true betrayal happens, not just when your secrets are shared, but when they're distorted or twisted for personal gain. Nothing is so bitter that a calm mind cannot find a remedy for it, said the Stoic philosopher Epictetus, reminding us that while betrayal can cut deep, we have the power to control how we respond. However, that control is tested when someone crosses the line and exposes your vulnerabilities for the world to see. It can feel like the most raw form of disrespect, like your inner world is no longer safe with them. Have you ever noticed how, once someone betrays your trust in this way, it's nearly impossible to rebuild that relationship? It's like a wall goes up, one that cannot be torn down with apologies or promises. The emotional damage caused by exposing someone's secrets is profound, as it reveals their deepest fears, struggles, and imperfections to the world. It's as if your personal space, your sanctuary, has been violated, and the trust you once placed in them now feels empty. No matter how much time passes, the scar of that betrayal remains. It lingers in the back of your mind, making it harder to feel safe and open around them again. The Stoics have much to say about privacy, wisdom, and justice. They value the protection of one's inner world above all else. In fact, Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." A person who cannot protect your secrets is not living up to this ideal. They are acting against the very virtues that guide us toward true wisdom and integrity. The Stoic reflection here is clear. To be wise is to know when and where to share your personal thoughts, and to act justly is to safeguard the trust others place in you. To expose someone's secrets is not just a personal failure. It's a violation of their humanity, their right to be treated with dignity and respect. And yet, in today's world, where social media and gossip often dominate, it has become more common for people to use others' secrets as tools for attention, validation, or manipulation. I'm sure you've seen it. Someone gets a little too comfortable, thinking that sharing someone else's personal struggles or flaws will make them seem more interesting or gain favor with others. Maybe you've even been in a situation where someone tried to get you to share something personal about another person, or they tried to pry into your private life. That's dodgy territory. It's a reminder that we have to be vigilant about who we trust and how much we reveal to others. In the end, trust is not just about being able to count on someone to keep their word. It's also about knowing they will protect your most vulnerable parts when the time comes. This is the essence of a sacred relationship, the understanding that your deepest thoughts, struggles, and fears will be kept in confidence, no matter what. But once that trust is broken, it's almost impossible to rebuild. Think back to a time when someone betrayed your trust by revealing something private you had shared with them. How did it feel when you found out? Was it something you could simply forgive, or did it change the dynamic of that relationship forever? If someone can't keep your secrets, if they cannot protect your vulnerabilities, then how can they be someone you can truly rely on? 6. They have a habit of playing the victim. Have you ever met someone who always seems to find themselves in the same kind of trouble, no matter what they do, and always manages to place the blame on everyone else but themselves? If so, you're likely dealing with someone who has mastered the art of playing the victim. This is a tactic that not only seeks sympathy but cleverly deflects accountability and responsibility. These individuals often position themselves as perpetual victims, even when it's their own actions that have caused the issue. They twist the narrative, making themselves the one who is wronged in every situation. It's more than just avoiding responsibility. It's a strategy to manipulate your emotions, keep you on their side, and maintain control. And what's worse, this behavior isn't just tiring, it destroys trust, the very foundation of any relationship. In the wisdom of Stoic philosophy, responsibility and accountability are cornerstones of personal integrity. Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, wisely stated, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Notice how he didn't say that external circumstances dictate your happiness, but rather your response to them. Someone who continuously shifts the blame and plays the victim is not just avoiding responsibility, they're actively avoiding growth. They are refusing to confront their own actions and shortcomings, leaving no room for self-improvement. By playing the victim, they are trapped in a cycle of self-deception. They will never look inward to improve, nor will they ever acknowledge the impact their actions have on others. And let's not forget how powerful this manipulation can be. Someone who portrays themselves as the victim can use your empathy to their advantage. You may find yourself feeling sorry for them, offering support, and making concessions for their behavior. Over time, they feed on that sympathy, keeping the focus on their struggles while avoiding any deeper self-reflection. How many times have you found yourself in a conversation with someone who is constantly recounting how the world is unfair to them, while dismissing their own role in creating the situation? This constant reshaping of reality to suit their needs can lead to serious issues. If someone can't take responsibility for their actions, they can't learn from their mistakes. Seneca, another Stoic sage, reminds us, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." In other words, these individuals create their own suffering by refusing to acknowledge their role in their troubles. By placing all the blame on others, they prevent themselves from growing or improving. When you're in a relationship with someone like this, it can be incredibly draining. At first, you may be understanding, even supportive, but as the pattern continues, you begin to realize that they're never willing to face their own flaws. They will never acknowledge their role in the problems that arise, and they will always look for an external scapegoat. This dynamic can erode your trust in them, leaving you emotionally exhausted, wondering if they can ever truly be reliable. You might start to feel manipulated, like their victimhood is just a strategy to avoid real accountability. Eventually, the trust you once had in them starts to crumble, because deep down, you know they're never going to take ownership of their actions. The Stoics would encourage you to focus on what you can control, which is your own response. Marcus Aurelius teaches us that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. So let's reflect on your own life for a moment. Are you someone who takes responsibility for their actions, even when it's difficult? Or do you ever find yourself blaming others or external factors for your troubles? This kind of self-awareness is not just valuable, it's essential for building trust in any relationship. The Stoics believed in taking ownership of one's actions, good or bad, because only then can we truly learn and grow. Now let's go back to the person who constantly plays the victim. If they are unwilling to own their actions, if they refuse to confront their mistakes and blame others for everything, how can you ever trust them to have your back? How can you rely on someone who avoids the truth? In the long run, trust doesn't just break down. It disintegrates when there is no honesty, no self-reflection, and no responsibility. Playing the victim isn't just emotionally exhausting for those around them. It's a self-destructive habit that guarantees no growth or improvement. When we don't take ownership, we deny ourselves the opportunity to get better, and without that growth, there is no real trust. If someone can't take responsibility for their actions, they're not someone you can trust. Trust requires honesty, self-awareness, and a willingness to improve. You may feel sympathy for them, but remember, the true test of a relationship is not how you feel about someone's hardships. It's how they handle those hardships and whether they're willing to learn from them. Trust is built on accountability, and if someone refuses to be accountable, they will eventually erode the trust you once had in them. Trust yourself to recognize these signs early and to choose wisely. And above all, remember, what we do now echoes in eternity. Every action you take, every moment of accountability, will shape not only your relationships but your own character and growth. Don't let someone's avoidance of responsibility pull you down. Instead, seek out relationships built on mutual respect, integrity, and the willingness to grow together. 7. They are always seeking attention. This constant need for validation isn't just a fleeting desire. It's a pattern, a behavior that reveals a lot about their character. When someone is persistently seeking attention, they often prioritize their own desires over the needs of others, which can create a significant barrier to trust. Trust is built on mutual respect and genuine connection, yet someone constantly seeking the spotlight tends to focus solely on themselves, driven by the need for approval and recognition. This isn't about enjoying a compliment or celebrating a success. It's about a persistent hunger for attention in every situation, often at the expense of those around them. In the wisdom of Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius profoundly said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." This idea encapsulates the Stoic belief that true contentment comes from within, not from external sources. If we constantly rely on the validation of others to feel good about ourselves, we surrender our own sense of peace and stability. A person who thrives on attention, seeking constant reassurance, gives away their power to others. Their self-worth becomes intertwined with external praise, making their behavior unpredictable and unstable. This need for external validation reveals a lack of internal strength, which is a foundational concept in Stoicism. A Stoic knows that their happiness comes from their own thoughts and actions, not the fleeting opinions of others. Therefore, someone who is always chasing attention lacks the internal grounding that Stoicism encourages. This constant craving for attention can be especially damaging in relationships because it often leads to manipulation. A person who needs to be the center of attention will do whatever it takes to maintain that position, even if it means undermining others or betraying trust. Think about someone who dominates every conversation, steering the focus back to their own accomplishments, no matter what the topic is. They downplay or even ignore your achievements entirely, not out of malice but because their primary goal is to remain the focal point. In such a dynamic, your contributions become irrelevant in the face of their relentless need to be admired. Over time, this kind of behavior can create an imbalanced and unhealthy relationship where you feel invisible or unimportant, overshadowed by their constant need for validation. When someone continuously needs to shine, the balance of mutual respect is thrown off and trust, the cornerstone of any healthy relationship, begins to erode. This kind of attention-seeking behavior is not inherently negative, but the way it's handled can be. The issue arises not from an occasional need for recognition, but from the incessant need for it. It's the manipulation that follows when someone's self-worth is so tied to the opinions of others that they disregard your needs and feelings entirely. A person who is always looking for attention may not have the emotional capacity to support others, as they are too wrapped up in their own desires. They might create a one-sided dynamic where their needs come first, leaving yours unmet. This kind of behavior can make you feel like you're always giving, always supporting, but never receiving the same in return. In any relationship, whether personal or professional, trust thrives in environments where both parties can share the spotlight. Where mutual respect and support are the foundation. True trust is built on the ability to recognize and celebrate each other's successes, not just one's own. A Stoic understands that everyone has a role to play, and that role is not defined by constantly seeking attention or recognition. True fulfillment comes from the internal satisfaction of knowing that you are living with integrity and purpose. Someone who is always chasing the spotlight will inevitably distort the balance of give and take, turning relationships into one-sided ventures. This becomes a burden, not just for you, but for them as well. The more someone relies on external validation, the more fragile their sense of self becomes, and the harder it is to build any lasting trust. When you notice someone consistently seeking attention or validation, take a moment to reflect on whether their behavior aligns with your values. Are they someone who values mutual respect, or are they more interested in feeding their own ego? In relationships where trust is important, it's vital to find balance, to recognize when someone is focused on their own needs to the detriment of the relationship. Trust requires empathy, understanding, and the ability to give as well as receive. A person who is constantly seeking attention can rarely offer this balance. In the end, if someone's behavior continually revolves around their own need for attention, it's important to question their motives. Can they truly be trusted to honor your needs and offer genuine support? Or will their insatiable desire for attention leave you feeling unseen and unimportant? Trust is built on mutual respect, and relationships built on one-sided attention-seeking behavior rarely stand the test of time. 8. They are always making excuses. If you've ever dealt with someone who constantly seems to have an excuse for every mistake, every failure, or every missed commitment, you know how frustrating and draining it can be. You've heard it before. I would have helped, but I was too busy. Or, it wasn't my fault, you know how things go. It's easy to dismiss these words in the moment, but after a while, you begin to notice a pattern. The excuses pile up, and you start to realize that these aren't just isolated incidents. They reflect a deeper problem. When someone is always making excuses, it's not just about avoiding responsibility in the moment. It's a sign of a fundamental flaw in their character. They avoid facing the uncomfortable truths about their own behavior, and in doing so, they avoid growing from their mistakes. This becomes a huge red flag for anyone trying to build trust with them. In the world of Stoicism, there's a clear and unwavering principle. You must take full responsibility for your actions, no matter how difficult or uncomfortable it may be. Seneca, one of the most prominent Stoic philosophers, expressed it simply: a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. What does this mean? Just as a precious stone needs friction to be polished and shine, a person needs challenges and personal responsibility to grow and improve. We are all flawed, and our growth comes not by avoiding difficult truths, but by confronting them head-on. When we make excuses, we evade the lessons that those challenges are trying to teach us. This avoidance of personal accountability, this constant deflection of blame, means that the person is not just avoiding responsibility in the moment, they're avoiding personal growth. And in doing so, they're building a barrier between themselves and trust. Consider the impact of this on relationships. Imagine you're depending on someone, whether it's a colleague at work, a friend, or a family member, and they consistently fail to meet their commitments. Each time there's an excuse. Something came up, they were too busy, or it wasn't their fault. You might try to be understanding at first, but over time, These excuses chip away at your trust. The more excuses they make, the more unreliable they become. You start to question whether their word means anything, and you begin to wonder if they even care about the promises they make. How can you trust someone who cannot own up to their actions? How can you depend on them when they continuously deflect responsibility? Excuses become a defense mechanism that prevents a person from facing the truth, and it's not just damaging to them, it's damaging to everyone around them. It creates an environment where no one feels confident in their words and no one feels safe relying on them. You start to realize that no matter the situation, there's always a new excuse. The excuse itself becomes a crutch, a way to avoid confronting the deeper issue. That issue is a lack of accountability, and the more it continues, the less you can rely on them. It's exhausting to keep hearing, "I'm sorry, but," without ever seeing any real change. And after a while, you begin to wonder, are they really sorry or are they just trying to avoid taking responsibility? This is exactly where the danger lies. Excuses are a form of denial, a way to avoid facing uncomfortable truths. And as Epictetus, another influential Stoic philosopher, famously said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." When we make excuses, we're choosing to avoid taking responsibility. We're choosing to shift the blame onto something or someone else instead of owning our decisions. It's a choice, and it's one that erodes trust. When someone constantly makes excuses, they're signaling to others that they're not willing to face their mistakes. Instead, they want to preserve their ego by shifting blame, making them unreliable and ultimately untrustworthy. Over time, this pattern of behavior becomes more destructive than it may initially seem. If someone constantly avoids responsibility, they're also avoiding the opportunity to learn and grow from their experiences. If they never admit they were wrong, how can they learn to make better decisions in the future? And if they don't grow, how can you trust them to change or improve? This becomes especially difficult in relationships where you rely on others. If a friend, family member, or coworker can't own up to their actions, how can you depend on them for anything significant in the future? The inability to take responsibility for one's actions creates a lack of accountability, and that lack erodes the foundation of trust. You can't trust someone who is consistently unreliable because their behavior shows you that they're not taking ownership of their role in the relationship. Excuses prevent growth, and without growth, trust cannot flourish. When someone is always making excuses, they're not only avoiding responsibility, they're avoiding the opportunity to become better, stronger, and more trustworthy. So, if you want to live a life of integrity and build strong, trustworthy relationships, take a page from the Stoics and remember, a gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. Growth and trust come from facing the challenges head-on, not running away from them. You've just unlocked some key Stoic wisdom. Now it's time to put it into action. Drop a comment with, "I control what I can," if you're ready to take charge of who and what you trust. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There's always more to learn on this journey to a stronger, wiser you. 9. They seek to control others. If you've ever found yourself in a relationship, whether personal, professional, or otherwise, where the other person is constantly trying to control you, you know how draining and frustrating it can be. Maybe it's a colleague who imposes their way of doing things without consulting you, or a partner who always wants to dictate your plans, making you feel like you have no room to breathe or make your own choices. At first, it might seem small, just a little push here and there. But over time, this need to control starts to take its toll. It begins to chip away at your trust and independence, and before you know it, you're left wondering, why does this person feel the need to control every aspect of our relationship or interaction? This constant need to control others stems from a place of insecurity. The person trying to dominate the situation is often not looking to help you, but rather to assert their power and feel a sense of control over their environment. But at what cost does this come? The more they try to manipulate and impose their will, the more they erode your freedom and autonomy. breeding resentment and unhealthy dynamics. In the world of Stoicism, Epictetus famously said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." This is a crucial point. When you try to control others, you're disregarding their autonomy, their ability to make decisions for themselves, and you're denying them the chance to respond freely to life's challenges. The Stoic teaches us that the only thing we can truly control is ourselves, our actions, thoughts, and responses. When someone seeks to control another, they are not living by this principle. Instead of focusing on their own actions and responses, they seek to manipulate external situations and people to fit their own needs. This not only undermines trust, but reveals their true motive, their insecurity. They need control to feel safe or powerful, but in doing so, they create an environment of tension and dependency, where true mutual respect and trust cannot grow. Have you ever been in a relationship where someone repeatedly tried to dictate what you should do, how you should think, or what your next step should be? At first, maybe it seemed like they were just being helpful, looking out for you, or showing concern. But as time went on, you likely started to feel like your voice didn't matter, like you were just a pawn in their game. This is because control doesn't come from a place of love or respect. It comes from a place of fear. And the person trying to control you may not even realize it. They are often acting out of their own fears and insecurities, fears that they aren't enough, that they need to control everything around them to maintain their sense of safety. But at the same time, by controlling others, they show that they lack the very thing they're trying to secure: trust. Trust is built on mutual respect and understanding, on the freedom to make decisions, learn from mistakes, and grow together. But when someone is always trying to control you, they undermine that process entirely. In a moment, a team project at work. You have a colleague who insists on doing things their way, disregarding any input from the rest of the team. Every suggestion you make is dismissed, and it's clear they're not interested in collaborating, only in asserting their control over the situation. At first you try to be patient, thinking that maybe they just have a strong vision. But as time goes on, you start to feel alienated, unheard, and frustrated. Your trust in them diminishes because you realize they are not willing to listen to anyone but themselves. Control can manifest in many ways, whether it's overt manipulation, subtle undermining, or imposing decisions without consent, but the effect is the same. It creates a power imbalance that makes it impossible for trust to thrive. This dynamic is not limited to work or professional relationships either. It can seep into personal relationships, friendships, or even family dynamics. No matter how much someone tries to control another person, they can't fully dominate or control them. People will always find ways to assert their own independence, and the more one person tries to take control, the more they undermine the foundation of trust in the relationship. Trust is based on the idea that both parties respect each other's autonomy, their ability to think for themselves, make their own decisions, and face life's challenges with mutual support. But when control enters the picture, that balance is shattered. Instead of standing side by side as equal partners, you begin to feel like a subordinate, constantly at the mercy of someone else's will, and that is no foundation for trust. This behavior is also detrimental to the person doing the controlling. The Stoic principle teaches us that by focusing on controlling others, we miss the opportunity to focus on our own growth and self-mastery. If your life revolves around controlling others, you are essentially avoiding the work that needs to be done within yourself. But if your thoughts are consumed with how to control others and manipulate situations, then your own inner peace and happiness will always be at the mercy of external factors. This kind of behavior stems from insecurity. People who need to control others often don't trust themselves, and their need to dominate others is a reflection of their lack of self-trust. The reality is, true inner peace comes from accepting that we cannot control others. We can only control ourselves, our reactions, and our choices. And when we focus on improving ourselves, building trust with others becomes a natural byproduct. The signs are often subtle at first, small comments or decisions made without consulting you. a pattern of disregarding your thoughts, or a constant need to steer the direction of things. When you find yourself in such situations, the Stoic principle of focusing on what you can control becomes essential. You can't control the actions of others, but you can control how you respond. Relationships built on trust are based on mutual respect, where both people have the freedom to make decisions, express their opinions, and contribute equally. When one person seeks to control the other, trust becomes impossible. Trust thrives when both people respect each other's autonomy, when they understand that true power lies in choosing how to respond to situations, not in trying to control others. So, remember the words of Epictetus. We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. Focus on your own actions and build relationships where trust, respect, and freedom are at the forefront. Only then can you truly begin to cultivate meaningful, trusting connections. As you reflect on these 9 signs of untrustworthy behavior, remember that trust is the foundation of meaningful relationships and personal growth. By applying the principles of Stoicism, you can build a life surrounded by those who value clarity, honesty, and loyalty. It's not always easy to recognize those who may not have your best interests at heart, but the Stoic path teaches us to prioritize integrity and self-awareness. By distancing yourself from toxic influences, you create space for relationships that foster mutual respect and peace. How will you apply these principles to your life today? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's continue the conversation on building trust and personal growth together. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Stoic in Your Life for more wisdom on living a purposeful Stoic life.